Hi, my name's Peter O'Brien and I'm the Chaplaincy Support Coordinator for St Anne's Hospice. And during this teaching, I just want to share with you some slides and some conversation about offering spiritual and religious support to our palliative care patients. I've been chaplain here for 11 years, and I've come to realise that, as we'll go on to see, that everyone is spiritual but not necessarily religious. And we'll see the differences between those two phrases, spirituality and religious needs, and the differences and the similarities too. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully you'll see some slides. Some I'll just read through, others I'll let you read. And then together we will discover, I hope, that people need holistic care. That is both the physical, the social, the psychological and the spiritual. And myself and we as a team here endeavour to meet the holistic needs of each individual, and specifically in my area is meeting the religious and spiritual needs of our patients and their carers and families. So I'd like to share with you some PowerPoint, some slides that will hopefully explain the need for spiritual and religious care. I suppose what justifies my role and my service is that NICE and also the World Health Organization both believe that patients and carers have to have access to staff who would help to meet people's spiritual and religious needs. And the multidisciplinary teams, MDTs, should have qualified, authorised and appointed spiritual caregivers that act as a resource for patients. So NICE guidelines and the World Health Organization really identify that spiritual care, religious care, is actually a core component of palliative care. It's crucial that people living with life-limiting and life-threatening illnesses have those needs met, those spiritual and religious needs. I would say, and I meet people all the time over these last 11 years that I've been chaplain here, that I would put people into this believing but not belonging category. Those people who say that they don't have a faith community or they don't attend a faith community, but they certainly believe. They believe in something bigger than themselves. They believe in a higher being, a higher teaching, a higher spirit, God, scripture, faith, principles. So lots of people, even though they would say they don't attend a worshipping community, they would still believe, but perhaps not belong. And they also, as well, see in my time as chaplain here at the hospice that people's mortality seems to drive their spiritual quest. In other words, when someone is faced with a life-limiting illness, they begin to ask the big existential questions of life, and we'll see what those are in a little while. So people may believe, but they perhaps don't belong to a faith group. These next few slides, I want to look at the differences between spirituality and religion. And these couple of slides coming up, you'll see some definitions of what spirituality means and is. Well, whatever gives a person purpose and significance is their spirituality. And we've seen there a couple of examples. It may not be through faith, but it may be through other things: nature, music, art, animals, pets, family, career. Those things in life which give people a real sense of purpose and significance. Our very essence of our own personal being. So like I said before at the start, every person is spiritual, but not necessarily religious. So sometimes in the documents I see when a patient's been clerked in, and I look on the system, and sometimes staff will put, this patient has no spiritual needs. I think what they mean is this patient may have no religious needs, but they certainly do have spiritual needs, because we're all spiritual. Again, whatever gives that person a sense of worth and significance is their spirituality. So we all have spiritual needs, may not be religious, however. Yet there are many people who are religious, and faith is paramount and important to them. It's a bit more concrete, this definition of religion. I guess spirituality can be a bit transient. It's fluid in its definition, whereas religion perhaps is a bit more concrete. Belief, faiths, practices that nurture a relationship with a superior being, God, force, or power. So yes, people meet in community together in a place of worship, but it's also an individual, personal search for purpose and meaning. Hopefully later this year we'll have this year's census come out, but this was a census done 10 years ago, and the majority, 59%, as you can see there, of England and Wales said that they were Christian, and the next biggest figure there was that 25%, a quarter of the population, said they had no faith. That was quite surprising figure, really, considering 10 years previous, in 2001, those who identified as Christian was 71% of the population, and it dropped down to 59 10 years later. And then from 2001 to 2011, the figure rose from 14 to 25% of people who said they had no faith. And the smaller religious groups, Judaism, perhaps Islam, Hinduism, increased. Certainly Islam, the Muslim population, rose from 3 to nearly 5% there in those 10 years. I put that on simply to see that still the vast majority of England and Wales would call themselves Christian. They may not attend a place of worship at all or regularly, but if they were to nail their colours to the mast, they probably identify themselves as a Christian person. And again, levels of commitment will vary between each person. So what's a religious need then? The people who I see in the hospice, they want to worship, whether collectively or an individual worship. The rituals, the rites, the blessings, the sacraments, baptism, weddings, Holy Communion, Mass, Sacrament of the Sick, Roman Catholic patients. Prayer, meditation, contemplation. People want an assurance that they are loved and forgiven, and that's really important for those, especially approaching end of life. They want to see an imam, a rabbi, a Christian minister, clergy, someone from the temple. So seeing a faith representative, we try and organise that for our patients here at the hospice. Icons, beads, prayer beads, crosses, scripture, things that are tangible. And again, I mentioned the death rites. So within each faith group, they may have a way of approaching death, rites at death and after death. And each faith is different. Each person in each faith is different. It's not one size fits all. So if a Muslim or a Jewish patient dies, then it's not you go to the book and see what the guidebook and see what does it say when a particular patient of the faith dies. Well, I would say, ask the person, before they can no longer communicate as a family member. How best do we support this person during death and after death? Because it's not one size fits all. Each person differs in the way they want to be treated after death. And I guess these are this slide, next two slides, are the existential questions that people ask. In other words, meaning of existence. What are the big questions that people ask, especially when they're faced with a life-threatening and life-limiting illness? And we need to avoid pat answers. There are no easy answers. People ask, as a Christian minister, people ask me what I believe in the afterlife, for example. What happens to me? Is there life after death? And by the same token, Muslim patients, Jewish patients, patients of other faiths will ask their faith representatives, what does our scripture, what do we believe about these big issues and these big questions? And as I say, these are big questions, big areas to tackle. But nonetheless, we try to answer them honestly, without being flippant. And that last sentence there at the bottom, why often means I'm hurting terribly. Some people express the why questions, not always wanting an answer, but just as a means of expressing their turmoil, their hurt, and their suffering. And we do well to avoid pat answers. Sometimes there are no easy answers at all. I'd like us just to read this. There are those people who see no purpose in suffering. There are others who learn through suffering. There are other people who say they have been, people of faith have been brought closer to God because of their suffering. I think suffering and pain is always a terrible thing. However, some good can come out of those things. And I've been with people who have expressed that because of their illness, because of their prognosis, because of the bad news that they've had, they've suddenly been brought up short, as it were. They've suddenly realised what life is about, how long they have left, what's important, what they'd like to achieve, who they'd like to be reconciled with, what things they need to put right before they die. So even though illness and pain, suffering are not good in themselves, I would say, good can come out of these things. But again, this is very subjective, and people will have different opinions about suffering. Dame Cicely Saunders, the founder, I guess, of the modern hospice movement, came up with this phrase of total pain. And we know if we work in palliative care, we work alongside people, that pain isn't just manifest in physical pain. People can be suffering, but not unwell or ill, because suffering comes through these areas of total pain: physical, psychological, social, and spiritual. And that is total pain, pain that affects all the areas and facets of our life. I've seen people brought closer to God and deepened in their faith because of their illness, but I've seen others too who have shunned God and faith and want nothing to do with him because of their illness. I've seen people who lose their role in the family, and that brings again this pain on this social aspect. Their life has changed. Perhaps they were a carer and now they need to be cared for. That brings with it its own heartache and pain. Obviously the physical pain that we see, psychological pain, depression and anger, getting your head round your current situation, needing counselling, needing talking therapy, needing medication. So this pain, this total pain is a real concept within the hospice movement, particularly with the patients we see in our hospice. And we as an MDT and as a team try to meet the holistic needs of our patients and their carers. I borrow these phrases, these aren't mine, but a wounded healer. We come to help others, but we are wounded ourselves. We come in very intimate moments and times of a patient's life, yet we're a relative stranger. We come with our expertise, but we're not really that expert, are we? Because I suppose I'm not going through what that person's going through. I'm a wise fool. In other words, there's something I do know, but there's lots of things I don't know. Yet I come alongside and try to support and help with my little expertise and knowledge. And when do we shed that professional facade of our role? I guess we always have to be professional. We need to be sometimes aloof, and I say that in the sense that not caring, but we need to stand away at times. And there are those times where we need to come close and embrace, shed tears, cry, get upset. There's a fine line, I suppose, between being professional and an expert and just being the real me, vulnerable, upset. Meeting people's spiritual religious needs, helping their general well-being, does improve physical symptoms, psychological symptoms. And it's more than just anecdotal evidence. And there's lots of literature out there that proves via talking therapy, counselling, religious help, spiritual care, people do get better. People do improve. their sense of well-being is increased. I guess if that stops people from accessing hospital, that can be a good thing, can't it? John Vanier, that's a lovely quote. It's so true. How many times have I come away from a patient, from a relative, and I've said to myself, I wonder if I find myself in that person's shoes, that I would react, behave in such a way that I've come away thinking they've done more to help me than I've surely done to help them. They've been uplifting, inspiring, encouraging. And the person I came to heal becomes my healer. Tremendous quote, that tremendous saying from Jean Vanier. These next slides, I guess, are a bit of a testament to my warped sense of humour around death and dying. I guess there is always some satire, some bit of humour to be had when we work with death and dying all day, every day. Well, I hope that was of some use and makes us think about what spiritual religious care is. And as I, as a chaplain, endeavour to meet those needs in our patients and their families and relatives. But please, if you want to discuss anything further, then feel free to contact me here at St Anne's. And bless you and thank you for watching.